Hello, welcome to today's lesson. Today's lesson we will be talking about Constructivism, and I will be your lecturer, Stephanie Morris. Traditional and Constructivism. Take a second, and what would you consider traditional teaching? What would you think Constructivism teaching is? When you think of traditional thinking, I personally think of a teacher standing at the front of the classroom and just speaking and us expected to write notes. But then Constructivism, I would imagine students working together and constructing their own knowledge. Traditional lessons and traditional teachings. Traditional teaching is a teacher-led lecture. Information is given from the teacher or a textbook, and students are required to memorize facts. So just like dates, presidents, 2 times 2 equals 4, just simple things like that. We're expected to memorize it based on facts only and not so much why things are. The classroom would usually consist of a teacher in the front of the room and students seated at their desks to follow along and take notes and ask questions when they're asked, if they have any. Assessments consist of testing with only correct answers of memorized facts, not like constructive questions and what you would think of this and if you have any ideas to improve things. Students usually work alone in a traditional teacher setting, and it leaves no room for critical or creative thinking. Constructivism, on the other hand, is a theory based off of observations and studies. The theory states that people construct their own understanding and knowledge of the world through experiencing things and reflecting on those experiences. Teachers often use technology as a resource for students to work hands-on with the subject. Teachers help students to construct knowledge instead of repeating a bunch of facts. So by them working hands-on, using technology, they're more likely to remember things and put what they've just learned to use, and they create their own new information. Students would work on projects either alone or in groups, preferably in groups, to create critical thinking skills that will relate to the real world. The classroom would probably be set up in tables to allow students to collaborate, discuss, and the teacher would just be going around, more of a facilitator or more like a little bit of a coach instead of a straight-on teacher to lecture, and they would be more there to guide students through their learning process. Constructivism, SAMR. SAMR is a model of tech integration designed by Dr. Ruben R. Huentidura, PhD. The SMAR model is simple, easy to gauge, and offers all educators something to strive for. Constructivism taps into students' curiosity and how things work. So they want to ask why, and they want more of an understanding instead of just going home to be like, oh, I just need to memorize these for the test and then I can forget about it later on. SAMR stands for substitution, argumentation, modification, and redefinition. Traditional versus constructivism. In a traditional class, the teacher leads, use textbooks and notes. It's a lecture structure, feeding kids information nonstop, and it's almost like an information overload. Uses tests as main source of assessments, and students ask most of the questions. Constructivism focuses go from teacher to students. Students are involved, more than just a textbook and teacher's knowledge as a resource, so tablets, games, computers, other technology. Teachers guide the students to their interactive learning process. Teachers ask the questions to help students reflect, and you use real-world situations to relate the knowledge. Here is just a quick little graph showing the difference between traditional classroom and a constructivist classroom. Transformation from traditional into a constructivism lesson. Let's change the first grade math class from traditional to constructivism. Originally, the teacher was teaching the students addition by just standing in the front at the board, giving examples, and supplying the answer. The students were having a hard time understanding how 2 plus 3 equals 5, 2 plus 2 equals 4, and so on, with just knowing the numbers 1 to 10 in order and not being able to understand, like, the number 2 stands for 2 items and not just it being a number. The teacher has decided to switch to a Constructivism approach. The next day, the teacher brought in a bag of apples and gave one to each student. The teacher wrote a problem on the board and had the correct number of students set their apples on the front of the desk. Together, the students will count out loud with the teacher to solve the problem. For example, 2 plus 2 equals what? Bobby and Sarah place their apples on the right side of the desk. Everyone count with me. 1 apple, 2 apples. Now Annie and Rachel, put your apples on the left side of the desk. Let's all count together. 1, 2, 3, 4 apples. So 2 apples plus 2 apples equals 4 apples. The class repeats this for several addition problems using different numbers, all getting a chance to take their apples up. The next day for math class, the teacher took all of her students to the computer lab to play educational math addition games, also using pictures and another thing that's hands-on and visual for them to help understand and get the knowledge of why and help them create their own knowledge. Constructivism is hands-on, visual, and interactive, all of which help the students to understand why 2 plus 2 equals 4, and not just memorizing 2 plus 2 equals 4. Here's my works cited, and thank you so much for listening today.